Good morning guys, welcome to a brand new YouTube video, Summer Shred episode 10. We are 10 episodes into this series now. Things are getting serious. The date today is Monday 5th of May, it's the bank holiday Monday. I've been away this weekend. I went to climb Ben Nevis with one of my former clients and some of his friends. It was his birthday. And I did have this, I had this vision of like making a really nice, kind of vlog out of the expedition of climbing Ben Nevis. That was very much the original plan. I was going to take you through the whole journey, show you the summit and everything. But not long after filming an intro to the video, at the bottom of Ben Nevis, I realised that even the trail that we were on, which is supposedly the easiest one, was not easy. I spent 8 hours of my life that day fighting for my life, fighting for survival. Because I found out to my horror that you can't deadlift your way up a mountain, and it's actually really tough on your legs. So basically I hyperventilated my way up in about 4 hours and 45 minutes, and then it took me about 3 hours to get down. And don't get me wrong, I feel like I've achieved something by climbing Ben Nevis without any previous training or doing anything really like that. But the key takeaway from climbing Ben Nevis is that mountains are not my idea of fun. And despite the accomplished feeling, not sure I'll probably do anything like that ever again. But either way, we are back. It feels nice to be stood on level ground once again. And my goal today is to record, edit, and upload this video today. It might end up being tomorrow, bear with me. We've got a lot to do today. The time is now 11:07. I had a long sleep last night. No, I've been awake for a while, but I did have a long sleep last night because my legs, my entire body, my existence is just suffering post-climb. So I had a really nice long sleep last night, got up at about like 9:30, been tidying my room, which has just gotten a mess because I've been traveling so much this past week. So on the agenda today, I've got paddle at 1:30 and need to have a good stretch of my legs to make sure that I'll actually survive that, because my calves especially are still extremely sore. I need to do a food shop and some food prep for lunches for this week ahead. And of course, I need to get you up to date with how the shred's been coming along. I've been happy with it for the most part, but I did an in-body scan on Thursday, which revealed something that I didn't really want to see. Pretty much every man's worst nightmare, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So go ahead and drop the video a like, subscribe to the channel. Summer Shred, episode 10. Let's do this. All right, first meal of the day is about to go down. I am having a 3-egg omelette, which I've made with, hang on, let me just pick it up. I put it inside a wrap. 3-egg omelette with about I want to say about 30 grams. Yeah, 30 grams of half-fat shredded cheese, a little bit of light mayo, just seasoned with salt and pepper, and this rather disheveled looking banana which needs to be eaten, so that's going to get consumed. This will be my only meal before paddle. Might have a little snack beforehand just for a few more extra carbs. I am going to be eating a few more carbs today. I feel like my body still definitely needs it. I'm still definitely in recovery mode, and to be perfectly honest, I probably shouldn't be playing paddle today. My legs are still definitely very sore. I'm going to have a good stretch, but the fact of the matter is this: I want to play paddle more than I care about being in pain. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to eat this, crush a little bit of laptop work, and then I'll catch up with you in a little bit. All right guys, so paddle is done. I've got myself some food in me. Now you're gonna have to bear with me because I've got quite a long clip incoming, but please stick around for it, because if you're someone who's tried to go through a fat loss phase or tried to do a cut at some stage in your life, this information that I'm about to share with you is extremely useful. And the main kind of thing that I want to drive home, and the main kind of objective that I want to fulfill over the next few minutes, is explaining why heavy calorie deficits are not a good thing, generally speaking. Well, I don't believe they are. I think in certain situations, I'm talking very specific situations, they have a time and place, but for the most part, for general population, I'm going to explain to you using my own data, because I've got a fair amount of it now, enough that I feel like I can explain this properly to you. So yeah, hopefully this will explain why the heavier deficit is not the way forwards in terms of a cut. So let's go ahead and explain what we've drawn here. So what I've done is I've got my in-body scan results here, which I've just taken the liberty of writing on the board for you, so you don't have to worry about watching graphics and I'll put them on the screen. So I've got 3 in-body scans that I've done so far over a course of, end of Feb up until the most recent one, which 1st of May, just a few days ago. And each one of those, the figures I've written down are weight, muscle, and fat. All of these are in kilograms because it's just easy for people to understand that way. So I want to bring to your attention, the fact that all of these numbers have made positive steps in the right direction. This is about 9 weeks worth of data, so just over 2 months worth of data. And as you'll see, my weight has gone down steadily, starting at 92.5 kilograms towards the end of Feb, weighing in at 89.2 kilograms at the start of May, start of this month. I want to just caveat the weight just itself, because these weights were not taken as morning weights, so my actual weight probably runs a little bit lower than this. Now, muscle and fat, obviously, in-body scans are a good way of measuring these things. They're probably not absolutely perfect, but they are better than,
the kind of commercialized scales that you can just buy for your own home and you just stand on, and it tries to analyze you that way. InBody Scan does a lot more of an accurate job of taking these figures. So as you see, when it comes to muscle mass, I started at 39.3 kilos, added half a kilo over the first 6 weeks or so, but then over the most recent 2 weeks or so, I've lost 0.6 kilograms of muscle. And in the previous clip, when I was explaining how I'm going through every guy's nightmare right now, that is the nightmare scenario for me right now. I'm losing muscle. It's absolutely heartbreaking. I've worked so hard for it, but it is what it is. You know, I'm in a cut. I asked for this. It's fact of the matter is, at some stage, you're probably likely to lose some muscle, but not that much. But anyway, I'm going to explain that in a second. Fat, as you'll see, has gone on a nice trajectory, starting at 24.1. Lost 2.6 kilos in the first 6 weeks-ish, and then lost a further 0.6 kilos in the 2 weeks where I dropped my calories further. It's probably worth mentioning that as well. In between these two scans, the 17th of April and the 1st of May, in between these two scans was when I reduced my calories further, because I wasn't necessarily happy with the results from the first month of my cut. As you may remember if you saw in a previous video, I decided to lower my calories down to 2,350, which I know is a heavy deficit for me. Heavier than I would have liked to have done, but in the interests of this competition that I've joined in my gym, I want to make sure that I ramp up my results as good as possible. Let's look at the first 8 weeks of data in isolation. So just ignore the bottom row for now. So between the 25th of February and the 17th of April, I lost nearly 2 kilo, I added half a kilo of muscle, and I lost 2.5 kilos of fat. When you look at those numbers, that's fantastic. I'm extremely happy with those numbers when you compare the compositions. When you see the data like this in front of you, it's very hard to argue with it. It's very hard to kind of not be happy with it. So considering the fact that these are my results in the first 6 weeks-ish, and I'm doing an 18-week cut, where that's only a third of the way through the entire cut, if I kept up that trajectory, I mean, I might not have hit the initial target that I set of 83 kilos at the end of this cut, but I think it'll be hard to argue that the results would be great, especially if they carried on in this kind of like fashion. But then on the 17th, when I reduced my calories further, because I wasn't necessarily happy with the rate of progress, and also, you know, there's competition in my gym, I knocked calories down a bit further to 2,350, which led to, you know, obviously, I mean, in those 2 weeks alone, I lost like 1.5 kilos of weight. 0.6 kilos of that was muscle, which is not good. Don't get me wrong, yes, you would expect to lose a little bit of muscle over time on a cut, but 0.6 kilos in 2 weeks is far too fast, and it indicates to me that I am just simply in far too heavy of a deficit. And bear in mind, that's despite the fact that I've been eating 220-ish grams of protein every single day, so it's not like that's an issue. Yes, there's also an argument that my rate of fat loss has accelerated in those past 2 weeks, but like 0.6 kilos of fat and 0.6 kilos of muscle, that is, it might sound good in theory to some people, but for me, that's just not a good, I don't think that's efficient at all. So what's happened here? What's caused this? And to be honest, this is why I wanted to talk about this topic of heavy deficits and why I don't think they're a good thing, is because, I mean, if you look at the weight in isolation, which most people do when they go on a cut, they might see that they've lost 1.5 kilos in 2 weeks, and that would sound fantastic. I'm sure maybe you watching this video, if I could tell you that you could lose 1.5 kilos in 2 weeks following a certain protocol, you probably would be happy with that result. And I can tell you for a fact as well that, like, the nutrition, yes, I've been dealing with hunger. Again, I believe that hunger is part of a cut. I've been dealing with it, but it's not been so bad to the point where I've like hated what I'm doing. I can quite easily manage the routine that I'm in at the moment, with the meals that I'm having, with the meal timing that I'm having. Yes, I do have hunger at some points during the day, but it's okay. It's fine for me to deal with. So it's not like mentally this is too tough for me. I don't think it is. I could carry this on if I wanted to. But the thing is, while you might be happy seeing a 1.5 kilo loss in 2 weeks, you might not see where that's coming from. So yes, let's just take these figures as the example. Yes, you might have lost a bit of fat, but you've also lost the same rate of muscle. And this is why, you know, I think a lot of people end up, you know, kind of looking at themselves in the mirror, and despite the fact that they've seen this, you know, the drop in weight, they might just look in the mirror and think, I just don't really feel like I can see it on me. There's a reason for that. You might have lost fat, but you've also lost muscle. So you've lost a bit of tone there. You know what I mean? You've lost some shape, you've lost some size. And despite the fact that you've lost the weight, you know, the corresponding drop in muscle isn't really going to amount to that much in terms of like looking better, if that makes sense. The reason this happens is because, quite simply, when your body doesn't get enough energy from food, it has to get energy from somewhere. So if you're someone who has maybe high levels of muscle tissue, then the body will just, quite simply, it will just turn to that. It will just start, you know, metabolizing that to use as fuel. As you can see, it will still use fat, and that's great as well, but it will also start to essentially eat away at its own tissue, because it's just not getting enough fuel from food, which is what it needs, especially if you want to maintain that all-important muscle tissue that you've worked so hard to build already. But guys, when it comes to a cut, yes, the objective might be to, you know, obviously cut fat mass. You want to probably see a decrease in weight on the scale, but you also want to preserve this. You want to preserve that muscle tissue as best as you can. If you lose equal amounts of fat and muscle, yes, you might look a bit smaller in general, but you're just not going to have the tone or the shape or the definition that you might want, you know, you might want to see at the end of a cut. This also provides really solid evidence for me as a fat loss coach who used to be obese to explain to you why short-term cuts are not necessarily a good thing. Again, yes, you can argue that in certain scenarios they have a place, but they're not for the general population. If you're going to go on a cut, guys, you need to make sure that it's a long-term process so that you can regulate, you know, your decrease in weight, but also you decrease it in muscle tissue and your decrease in fat. You want to manage all these things, you know, concurrently. If you go into too heavy of a deficit, yes, you risk all the, you know, most common things. You risk mentally just burning out very quickly. You risk being miserable. You risk being hungry all the time. You risk being a nightmare around your friends. You risk constantly being in a low mood. You risk just being agitated. That's not a way to live your life. And as if that wasn't bad enough, you lose muscle tissue. That is a nightmare scenario. Guys, long-term results are the way forward. And that's, again, you know, there's solid evidence of that here in the first 6 weeks as opposed to the 2 weeks after that. So despite the fact that, yes, I'm in a fat loss phase, I'm in a cut, guess how I'm responding to this data? I'm actually upping my calories very slightly. I've been on 2,350. And yes, the results have been great, but I would also argue that, you know, 1.5 kilo loss in weight is probably a bit too quick. And the reason it is, you know, the reason that figure is as high as it is because my body's just been eating muscle tissue, which I do not want to happen. So I'm increasing my calories. I'm probably gonna, you know, increase the calories across the board. So yes, I'm gonna add to proteins. I'm gonna add to carbs and fats as well. I'm probably only gonna add like 200 or so, or maybe even less. I don't know. I haven't quite decided yet. I will decide by the end of today and probably by the end of this video, so I'll let you know a little bit later. But I need to, you know, go back to my laptop and do a deep dive on my own data just to make sure that, like, I get things right moving forwards. So the main takeaway point I want you to understand from this is that yes, you need to be in a calorie deficit to lose fat, but there is such thing as too heavy of a deficit. There are all kinds of risks associated with that. Not just the common ones, but also, you know, losing muscle tissue as well, which is what you really do not want to do. I mean, I wouldn't have been that bothered if it was like -1 or maybe at a push -2, but -6 is just far too much. And if you find yourself in a similar position where, I don't know, if you have access to maybe doing an in-body scan or figure out what your muscle, fat, etc. is, or maybe you have scales at home that show long-term data over time that you have like seen decreases in these. If you find yourself in a similar position to me, I would also recommend that you also up your calories, because ideally you want to keep muscle as consistent as possible. And as you'll see, it is possible to gain muscle while losing fat, as I've identified in the first 6 weeks of my cut. So make sure you give yourself plenty of time to achieve your goal. Make sure you regularly monitor what you're doing. Make sure you regularly monitor your results. Please, for the love of God, don't go into a too heavy a deficit too soon. Any way you look at it, it just doesn't work out well. Hopefully you've taken something away from this at least, but if you're having trouble understanding anything, please just drop it in the comments below. I'll make sure that I address it. And that's enough waffle for this segment, so I'll catch us in a little bit.
All right, guys, so very much a short and sweet episode from me this week. I was kind of thinking about going to Open Gym to get a quick pump on, but to be honest, it's coming at 7 PM and I just can't be bothered. My body's still so exhausted from that hike on Saturday. I'm going to put the stats on the screen from my Garmin, and like, I just burned so many calories, was walking for so long, and also the ascent was just like in parts so steep. Calves have been absolutely screaming at me all day, but I really want to play paddle, so of course that takes precedent. I know it wasn't like a normal Summer Shred episode where there was no weigh-in, there was no physique check, none of that stuff, but that will be back in the next episode. The main thing that I really wanted to hit home in this video was, you know, that stuff that's still on the board behind me, and you know, the topic of calorie deficits. I feel like calorie deficits are such like a huge thing in the world of fat loss, and you know, people just assume that the bigger the deficit is, the better it is, and that's just not true. For me, fat loss is simple, but it's not easy. It's simple in the sense that, you know, but I'm just very overly generalizing here, but you do pick an appropriate calorie deficit. But what makes it not easy is the fact that you have to stick with that for a very long time, longer than you think. Like, you can't just do a cut for like I don't think it's possible to do a cut for like 4 to 6 weeks and expect any significant results. And even if you do see like big drops in your weight in that time, as you've seen from my own results here,
Yes, the scale weight might go down and everything, but like in terms of how you actually look, I'm not really sure how much better you're going to look. If you have a lot of fat to lose, then sure, you can probably be a bit less anal about things. You can just kind of like go into a deficit and just lose the weight, because if you already have more fat mass by default, the body's just going to look to shift that because there's so much of it. But if you're looking to do a proper like body recomposition, like if you've been in the gym gaining muscle and you want to like start losing fat and everything, you have to be a bit more careful. But yeah, anyways, I already went ahead and explained that earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up right here. I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in. If you took anything away from this video today, please do leave it a like and subscribe to the channel to stay up with future content in this series, because I'm documenting an entire 18-week cut as a fat loss coach who used to be obese, lost the weight and kept it off, and I want to show you how you can do the same. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.